Hi, we're Ariel.
And Michelle,
and we're
the Board Game Tutors.
Today we're going to be showing you Advanced Concepts, Part 2, for the board game Summoner Wars Alliances, specifically the faction, the Cave Filth. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right.
So today, exclusively, we're going to be talking about mutations, because obviously we told you about that in the last video and didn't explain it, so we're going to explain it now. So, first thing, main thing you need to know about mutations are, you can tell a card is a mutation because it says directly underneath their name, Mutation of the Filth. Now, that sounds kind of confusing because I thought we were talking about the Cave Filth, but no. In this particular faction, it's called the Cave Filth, which is a combination of cave goblins and the Filth. So that's why there are mutations of the Filth in this deck. So that's one way you can tell a mutation card from all the rest of the regular Cave Filth cards. But one other way you can also tell is by comparing the backs of the cards. Over here, as you can see, all the mutations have the Filth symbol and a dark red background. The Cave Filth have this other symbol, which is similar but not quite the same, and it's a lighter red. So that's the way you can distinguish mutations from Cave Filth cards.
So like Ariel said, mutations are unique to the Filth, and that includes this faction. So we haven't encountered them elsewhere. Also, we haven't covered the Filth faction in the past because we don't have any of them. We just have the Cave Filth. So
yeah, let's go ahead and get started on the mutations rule card.
Okay, so we're going to tell you about how mutations work and then give you any examples that we need to explain. All right, so this card has quite a bit of text, but we're going to kind of go through it sentence by sentence. When summoning a mutation, it must be placed directly on top of a common Filth unit that you control. So summoning for mutations is quite different from other summoning because it's not next to a wall. It has nothing to do with a wall. You just put a mutation on one of your common units. So that means your common unit may have already moved across the board. So maybe you're summoning a mutation really close to your opponent's summoner. It's quite different from normal summoning. So here are the common units that you could be using to do this. In this deck, we just have two kinds, Taskmasters and Prisoners. So mutations will typically be going on these common units.
And they will not be eligible for being placed on top of champions that you control. And also, you will be able to put mutations on top of enemy common units that you put in your prison pile and brought back to the board. It's all kind of complicated, but you can put mutations on enemy commons.
Right, normally when an event card tells you that you can do so. All right. The values and special abilities on the mutation card override those present on its host unit. So basically the common unit that we just mentioned that would already be on the board, it's just kind of sitting there under the mutation card. All of its statistics are canceled out. The mutation basically just replaces them. So like here we have the Barbed Mutant is one of the examples from this deck.
Yeah, we're not going to go into explaining it right now, but basically the mechanic is when you summon it and you pay its summon cost, this one's 3, then you would put it on the common unit. So just like that.
So you've basically given up whatever the values were that were on the common unit, generally to replace them with better ones. So that common unit is just kind of sitting there underneath the mutation card. You don't really need to worry about any of the information on the common unit at this point.
Okay, so yeah, basically you can think of it as that common unit transformed into a mutant.
Right, it mutated apparently.
Right.
And we have no idea why, but that's just how this faction works.
Okay, third sentence.
If a Filth player summons a new mutation onto a unit that already has a mutation, the previous mutation card is returned to the player's hand, and the new mutation takes immediate effect. So you're actually able to have a mutation on a common and then exchange that mutation with a different one from your hand.
So for example, if this Bone Mutant was already on that common, you could decide to switch the mutations. It transformed again. And now it is no longer a Bone Mutant, it is a Barbed Mutant. That's the demonstration, obviously. Okay. Not all of the details yet.
And then that Bone Mutant would go back into your hand.
Right, this would go back into your hand, not anywhere else.
When summoning a new mutation onto a unit that already has a mutation, reduce the new mutation's summon cost by a number equal to the summon cost of the mutation it is replacing. So whatever you already paid to put a mutation on that common unit kind of counts toward the new one. So in this example,
the Bone Mutant was originally there at a summon cost of 4. The Burrow Mutant is now transferred onto it. He has a summon cost of 3. So this would basically reduce the cost to 0, essentially, because you paid 4 for the Bone Mutant. Now you paid 3 for the Burrow Mutant. So basically, you don't get any magic back,
right.
But that is what would happen in this particular case. If it was reversed, and you had the Burrow Mutant, and you swapped and changed into the Bone Mutant, then you would have to pay just 1 magic.
Right, so that's a pretty good value, it seems. Like the magic that you already put into it, you get to kind of credit toward the new mutation.
Okay, so that's that. Next sentence.
And as Ariel mentioned, this sentence points out, you cannot reduce a mutation's summon cost below 0. So yeah, you don't get magic back or something like that. It's just you may not have to pay at all for the new mutation if you already paid enough from the previous one that it covers the cost. And then when placing... Oh, there we go. When placing a new mutation on a mutated unit, move all wound markers over to the new mutation. So the wounds just stay, nothing really changes. You just switch the cards around and then put the wounds back on the new mutation.
Okay, so if the Bone Mutant had 1 wound, then if I changed to a Burrow Mutant, that wound would transfer to the Burrow Mutant, and this Bone Mutant would have no damage and go back into your hand.
All right. All abilities and events that affect common units also affect mutated units. So even though a common unit has a mutation, it's still considered to be a common unit as far as wording goes, as far as any of the details. It's treated like a common unit still.
So if you come across an enemy army where the summoner has a special ability that affects commons, it also affects mutations. If you also have enemy armies that have event cards that also affect common units, mutations are also eligible for those typically bad effects to happen to the mutations as well as the commons.
Right. And then finally, this last part isn't too relevant for what we're talking about, but it says, when building a custom Summoner Wars deck, mutations can be added in place of common units and or champion units. You can never have more than 1 copy of a specific mutation in a deck. So as usual with our videos, we're not really going to talk about deck building. That's kind of its own separate thing if you want to do that.
That would be its own series of videos on its own.
Right. But yeah, so that little note there is just for anyone who is interested in deck building.
And also, obviously, you can't have more than 1 Burrow Mutant in your army. That's the other important thing. All right. And so obviously when you first get the deck, there's only going to be 1 copy of each mutation. So you don't need to worry about that on your own. But that is that. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about all the mutations. And I'm going to move these guys out of the way. Okay,
so these are all the specific mutation cards that come in this Cave Filth deck.
Okay.
So this is the Burrow Mutant. It has a summon cost of 3, an attack value of 4, is a melee fighter, and has 3 hit points. So this is the special ability for the Burrow Mutant. It's called Burrow, unsurprisingly. When moving this mutant during your movement phase, you may move it 1 additional space. It may move through other units, but must end its move on an unoccupied space. When attacking with this mutant, reduce its attack value by 1 during that attack for each space it moved on that turn. So you have an extra bonus kind of with the Burrow Mutant. He's able to move 3 spaces as opposed to the usual 2. And he can move through other units, although that means just units, not walls, just so you know. So just units.
Ironically, I think Burrow would mean a wall, but the text says not. Specifically, it only says people. So you can literally go underneath people, but apparently the walls have a really solid foundation, so he can't go underneath those.
That would probably be too powerful. That's most likely why they didn't allow that. And then he does, so he can go further, but then he also loses some attack value. Of course, he starts out with an attack value of 4, which is amazing. So, you know, if he moves 1 or 2 spaces, he's still going to have a pretty good attack value. But yeah, you just subtract from your attack values. You subtract 1 for each space that he moved on this current turn that we're talking about.
Right. So obviously, if he moved 3 spaces, he would only have 1 die to roll.
Yes.
And obviously, if he didn't move at all, he'd have all 4. So obviously, just subtract 1 for each space he moves.
Okay.
All right. Next one.
Then we have the Bone Mutant. He has a summon cost of 4, an attack value of 3, is a melee fighter, and has 4 hit points. His special ability is called Bone Shard. This one is pretty straightforward. When attacking with this Bone Mutant, you may place 1 wound marker on this unit to treat it as if it has the bow symbol instead of the sword symbol during that attack. So our guess is he like dismantles himself and throws bone shards at the enemy.
He's a really weird, freaky looking mutant. Yeah, basically he just detaches his arm and throws it at you.
Yeah. So he wounds himself, but he suddenly becomes ranged instead of just being a melee fighter. And since he has 4 hit points, you could do this a few times if you felt like it.
Yeah. Obviously you wouldn't want to do it the last time unless you really wanted to try and throw 3 dice at somebody, literally.
Yeah.
But yeah. So not a terribly smart move to use when he's close to dying.
Right.
But yeah, that's the Bone Mutant for you.
So you basically just calculate the risk with him. Okay, then this is called the Legion Mutant, arguably the strangest looking. It has a summon cost of 0, an attack value of 0, is a melee fighter, and has 1 hit point. So those are pretty interesting stats. But let's read about the special ability and then they'll make a little more sense. So the special ability for this guy is called Merge Flesh, one of those really gross sounding ones. Yeah. So his special ability is, when summoning this Legion Mutant, you may spend up to 4 magic points to place that number of units from your prison pile under this card. So you're going to spend magic, and the amount of magic you spend determines how many units you take from your prison pile and put under the card. And then it says, add 1 to this Legion Mutant's life points and attack value for each unit that is under it, up to a maximum of +5. This ability can never be lost as a result of an opponent's card effect. Okay, so basically you're going to see how many units you have in your prison pile and determine how many you can afford to put there, because you're going to pay 1 magic point for each, and you can take up to 4 people from your prison pile. And then that's going to determine what his life points are and what his attack value is.
So it's a little confusing if you don't have all the cards in front of you, but when you actually do it, it makes a lot more sense. So I don't have all the commons that I need out right now to illustrate this example, so we're just going to use these champions and pretend they're commons.
Yeah, that would allow them to be in the prison pile, because remember, we don't have champions in the prison pile.
Right. So let's just pretend that, okay, so we wanted to summon this Legion Mutant on top of this Taskmaster. So what do we do, Michelle?
Well, you're going to see how much magic you have to spend, and you're going to see how many units are in your prison pile, and then you're going to spend up to 4 magic to put up to 4 units from your prison pile.
Okay, so let's just pretend we had 4 magic, and we have 4 people in our prison pile. Mm-hmm. So we'd spend our 4 magic, like the card says, and then you would put, so there is 1 card here already that is a common unit.
Right, he's going to go under the mutation.
Obviously. And so basically, I would pretend it's a common, 2, so 2 cards. Oh, not 2 cards, but 1 card, 2 cards, 3 cards, 4 cards, because I paid 4 magic.
Right, so now total there are 5 cards that are going to be under this mutation, because we count that common unit that had to be there for us to summon the mutation. We count that toward the total number of cards that are under the mutation. 1,
2, 3, 4, 5. So just pretend they're all commons. I know it's not common, but that's okay. And then we put the Legion Mutant on top. So because it says you can have a maximum of +5 in terms of its life points and its attack value. So how many cards are under this? 5. So its attack value is now 5, which is huge, pretty awesome.
Yeah.
4 magic. Obviously, you have to pay it out of your magic and your prison pile. So that's a pretty steep cost. Mm-hmm. But he has 5 attack, which is pretty awesome. And also, he has 1 life point already as a Legion Mutant, and he has 5 cards underneath him, thereby meaning he has 6 life. So 5 attack and 6 life when you pay for the maximum.
Right.
So obviously, you just have to do the math each time and count, and then obviously remember. If you don't remember, obviously you can count the cards underneath him. But that is what his life value is. There's not really an easy way to keep track of his life value.
Right.
But
yeah.
basically you just have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, remember, and you can count the cards if you do get confused.
And so, like, if you're like, wait, no, he had 4 life. No, he had 5 life. No, I don't remember. Just count the cards again. And that will show you, plus that 1 right there. And also, this ability can never be lost as a result of an opponent's card effect. So if you have an enemy army or an enemy summoner, enemy card effect that would reduce or take away his cards, this is not affected by that.
Right. However, when your opponent destroys him, they will get all those cards as magic.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind.
So obviously, if you kill the Legion Mutant, that's 1 magic, 2, yeah, it's 6 altogether. So obviously, you don't want to let your opponent take this guy away from you. Like, if you can, you want to kill it yourself. So that way you get the 6 magic back.
Right. Right. So that's something to keep in mind.
So, yeah, that's that. And this is true with all mutants, actually. If you have any common, like, if you have a mutation and a common unit underneath it, your opponent will get 2 magic from killing that mutation.
Yeah.
So you got to keep that in mind as well.
Now, the next mutant is much simpler. This is the Poison Mutant. He has a summon cost of 2, an attack value of 2, is a melee fighter, and has 3 hit points. And his special ability is Poison Sting. When this mutant wounds a common or champion unit with an attack, instead of adding wound markers, add 1 poison marker for each wound. So note that this doesn't apply to summoners. It applies specifically to commons and champions. It also wouldn't apply to any conjurations that you might be fighting against. And so it's really simple. You will need poison markers for this one. I think we don't have them out, but yeah, they come with the game. You'll be placing poison markers in place of wound markers whenever you attack.
So whenever he attacks, any wounds he causes will not be red wound markers, but will be green poison markers, which we showed you in the Jungle Elves videos that we've done in the past.
And this is the only guy in the alliances that uses poison markers. So, interesting fact.
It's kind of funny, actually, because they give you a bunch of green poison markers that have a green skull mark on them, but this is the only guy that poisons people in the entire alliance's factions.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Why would you give that many poison markers? I don't know. It just...
Yeah, he's not likely to use all of the poison markers that are available.
Unless he's a champion and he just starts poisoning people left and right, which probably not going to happen that many times.
Yeah, and he only has 3 life, so your opponent will probably kill him fairly quickly, especially if he acts like a major threat.
So that is the Poison Mutant.
Then we have the Grotesque Mutant. He has a summoning cost of 3, an attack value of 1, is a melee fighter, and has 4 hit points. His special ability is called Cowering Fear. Each time a common enemy unit moves adjacent to this mutant, roll a die. On a result of 4 or higher, place that unit on top of your prison pile. So this is similar to another special ability that we've seen in the past called Fear, which they're in the Swamp Work. That's in the Swamp Works faction, for example. With that one, an enemy unit that came adjacent to that character, basically if it got scared off, it would just be gone from the game. But the difference here is that it will go to your prison pile.
And you have no choice about that. It goes to your prison pile. You can't put it in your magic pile.
Right. So this basically discourages your opponent from sending any commons adjacent to this guy, because then they might not even get to attack. They might just have to leave the game and go to the prison without ever attacking.
Basically die and become a prisoner.
Yeah.
So, obviously, your opponent will try to attack the Grotesque Mutant. Obviously, he isn't very powerful on his own. He only rolls 1 die.
Right.
But obviously, your opponent, if they only have melee commons, they will not try to attack him very much because, he might just send them into the prison pile. So they'll probably go after you with champions and the whatnot, their summoner, for example, or just people who have ranged abilities as well.
Okay, so that's a Grotesque Mutant. Then we have the Barbed Mutant. He has a summon cost of 3, an attack value of 2, is a melee fighter, and has 4 hit points. His special ability is called Assault, which we've also seen elsewhere. When this mutant attacks, it may attack all enemy units that are adjacent to it. Resolve each attack separately. So obviously this could be a lot more attacks than you usually get in your attack phase. If he's surrounded, he can do up to 4 attacks. And so he just attacks every enemy unit that's adjacent to him, and he does that, each of them as its own die roll.
And yeah, those were all the mutant cards.
All right, so we hope you enjoyed the content of this video. Feel free to subscribe to our channel on YouTube if you would like to see more on a regular basis. Feel free to leave us any comments or questions or clarifications. You can also find us on BoardGameGeek.com. Our username is TheBoardGameTutors, one word. And yeah, we appreciate all of your feedback.
All right, thanks so much, everybody. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.
All right, thanks. Bye.
All right, bye, everybody.